Information warfare, a new perspective. Information warfare, InfoWar, refers to the strategic use of information and communication technologies, ICT, to gain an edge over adversaries. This form of conflict goes beyond traditional battlefields and involves disrupting or exploiting digital systems to achieve tactical, economic, or psychological objectives. Common tools in information warfare. Weapons used in digital warfare may include malware, viruses, worms, trojans, and logic bombs. Exploits: backdoors, trapdoors, penetration tools. Advanced technologies: electronic jamming, nanotechnology, and digital espionage tools. Categories of information warfare. According to defense analyst Martin Levitsky, InfoWar can be divided into several domains, each with distinct methods and objectives. 1. Command and control, C2, warfare. This involves taking over or manipulating an enemy's systems and networks, giving the attacker control over operations or data. 1. Command and control, C2, warfare. This involves taking over or manipulating an enemy's systems and networks, giving the attacker control over operations or data. 2. Intelligence warfare. This centers around gathering, protecting, and denying access to critical information using sensor technologies and system manipulation to dominate operational decision-making. 3. Electronic warfare involves disrupting communication through electronic means, such as radio interference or cryptographic manipulation, making it difficult for adversaries to transmit or receive reliable information. 4. Psychological warfare. This tactic targets the mindset of the enemy, using propaganda, misinformation, or fear to weaken morale and influence decision-making. 5. Hacker warfare. Cyber intrusions are used to steal data, disrupt services, send false messages, or monitor systems. Common techniques include deploying malware, sniffers, and social engineering attacks. 6. Economic information warfare targets the financial and informational infrastructure of a nation or business. By blocking data flow or manipulating online services, attackers can inflict serious economic damage, especially on digitally dependent organizations. Defensive versus offensive information warfare. Both defense and offense play a role in InfoWar. Defensive InfoWar strategies focus on protecting ICT infrastructure. Preventive measures, deterrence strategies, real-time alerts and detection, emergency response and preparedness. Offensive InfoWar tactics involve launching targeted attacks against an adversary's digital systems. Web server and application exploits, malware deployment. Man in the middle, Mighty M, attacks, system hacking and disruption techniques. Key takeaway: information warfare is a modern battleground where digital tools replace conventional weapons. Whether through psychological manipulation, data theft, or electronic sabotage, InfoWar poses serious challenges for cybersecurity professionals. Understanding these forms of warfare is essential for both ethical hackers and defenders to build effective protection strategies. Understanding the cyber kill chain. The cyber kill chain is a strategic model used to visualize how attackers plan and execute cyber intrusions. It breaks down the stages of an attack, allowing organizations to anticipate, detect, and respond to threats more effectively. This framework gives cybersecurity professionals deeper insight into an attacker's strategy, making it possible to apply appropriate security measures at each stage and reinforce the organization's IT defenses. Purpose of the cyber kill chain. The cyber keychain methodology is developed to support intelligence-driven defense. The cyber kill chain helps identify and counter intrusions before they escalate. It maps out the attacker's journey, from initial research to final impact, so defenders can detect malicious behavior early and implement tailored countermeasures. How it works. Inspired by military strategy, this approach views cyber attacks as a sequence of predictable phases. By understanding each stage, defenders can disrupt the attacker's progress and contain threats before critical damage is done. Key benefits: highlights potential vulnerabilities at every stage of an attack, enables proactive defense planning, enhances threat detection and incident response, reveals attacker tactics, techniques, and procedures. TTPs helps identify indicators of compromise, IOCs, based on behavior and tools used. The 7 phases of the cyber kill chain is outlined by Lockheed Martin. Cyber attacks generally follow these 7 phases. 1. Reconnaissance. Gathering information about the target. 2. Weaponization. Creating a malicious payload or exploit. 3. Delivery. Transmitting the payload to the target, e.g., via phishing, USB, or email. 4. Exploitation. Executing the malicious code on the victim's system. 5. Installation. Installing malware to establish persistence. Point 6. Command and control. C2. Creating a remote channel for control and data exfiltration. Point 7. Actions on objectives. Executing final goals such as data theft, destruction, or sabotage. Why it matters. By understanding how adversaries operate at each phase, organizations can apply specific security controls to break the attack chain, detect malicious activity before it leads to compromise, tailor defense mechanisms to disrupt attacker behavior. Cyber kill chain. Key attack phases and adversary behavior. Understanding each phase of the cyber kill chain equips cybersecurity professionals with the tools to recognize and stop attacks before they cause serious harm. Let's break down how attackers operate, from creating a malicious payload to achieving their final objectives. Reconnaissance phase. The attacker's first move in the reconnaissance phase. Cyber adversaries gather as much intelligence as possible about their target before initiating an attack. This initial stage focuses on identifying potential vulnerabilities that can be exploited later. Attackers search for technical, organizational, and personal data, such as IP addresses, domain names, software vulnerabilities, and employee information, that can help them map out the target's digital footprint. Information collection techniques. To gather intelligence, attackers rely on both passive and active reconnaissance methods. Passive methods involve collecting data without directly interacting with the target's systems, such as searching the internet for public data. Active methods may involve scanning systems or probing networks, which can potentially alert defenders. Common adversary actions in this phase. Researching the target organization using public sources, search engines, and open source intelligence, OSINT. Conducting social engineering to trick employees into revealing sensitive details. Harvesting data from social media platforms, business directories, and web services. Monitoring the target's web traffic, browsing behavior, and visited websites. Performing domain and network mapping using tools like HOIS, DNS lookups, and footprinting. Running port scans and service discovery tools to identify exposed entry points. Probing for software versions, misconfigured services, and potential login credentials. Why reconnaissance matters. This phase is crucial for attackers because it lays the groundwork for future exploitation. With a clear view of the target's network architecture, defense gaps, and internal structure, the attacker can design a more targeted and effective attack strategy, often gaining access without raising alarms. Weaponization phase. Once attackers have completed their reconnaissance, they analyze the gathered intelligence to identify specific vulnerabilities in the target environment. Based on these weaknesses, they select or craft a custom payload, often malware paired with an exploit and backdoor, to gain unauthorized access. Attackers may tailor their approach to compromise particular systems, networks, or even individual users. Common attacker actions include selecting or developing malware that fits the identified vulnerabilities, repurposing or modifying existing malicious code, launching phishing campaigns with malicious attachments, using exploit kits and botnets for weapon deployment. Delivery phase. At this stage, the attacker delivers the crafted payload to the intended target. This is typically done through email attachments, infected USB drives, compromised websites, or vulnerable applications. Delivery methods may include sending spear phishing emails with malicious attachments, dropping infected USB drives in target areas, conducting watering hole attacks on frequently visited websites, exploiting insecure operating systems or applications. The success of this phase depends on whether the organization's defenses can detect and block the delivery method. Exploitation phase. Once the payload reaches the target, it activates by exploiting a specific flaw in the system, be it an application, operating system, or network configuration. This phase initiates the attacker's control over the system. Examples of exploitation: triggering buffer overflows or code execution vulnerabilities, exploiting weak authentication or misconfigured access controls, bypassing security through privilege escalation or brute force techniques. Installation phase. In this step, the attacker installs additional malicious components to maintain access and continue operations undetected. This often includes establishing backdoors and remote access tools, RATs, that provide persistent control over the compromised environment. Activities include installing malware that allows continuous remote access, concealing malware using obfuscation or encryption, using stealth techniques to evade detection by firewalls or antivirus systems, spreading the infection laterally across the network. Command and control, C2, phase. Once the malware is in place, the attacker sets up a communication channel between the compromised device and a remote server under their control. This link is used to receive instructions, exfiltrate data, and control compromised systems. Key C2 tactics. Establishing encrypted communications over HTTP, HTTPS, DNS, or email using tunneling and proxy tools to avoid detection. Applying privilege escalation for deeper access. Erasing logs and hiding digital footprints. Actions on objectives. With full control of the victim's system, the attacker proceeds to achieve their ultimate goal. This could involve stealing data, destroying systems, disabling services, or using the compromised system as a springboard for additional attacks. Potential attacker goals. Data exfiltration, e.g., intellectual property, credentials, p.e., disrupting operations or infrastructure. Launching secondary attacks within or outside the organization. Understanding tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. TTPs describe how attackers plan and execute their operations. They help cybersecurity teams anticipate threats and develop defense strategies accordingly. Tactics describe what the attacker is trying to accomplish, e.g., persistence, privilege escalation. Techniques explain how the attacker attempts to achieve those goals, e.g., credential dumping, phishing. Procedures refer to the specific implementation steps or tools an attacker uses. By profiling TTPs, security teams can predict attacker behavior and stop threats early. Identify system vulnerabilities before they are exploited. Enhance incident detection, response, and prevention. Understanding TTPs is critical to protecting against advanced persistent threats, APTs, and building a proactive defense posture. Key takeaway. The cyber kill chain outlines how adversaries conduct attacks, from weapon creation to mission success. By understanding the attacker's mindset and methodology at every stage, cybersecurity professionals can anticipate threats, implement layered defenses, and protect critical systems more effectively. Tactics. The strategic blueprint of a cyber attack. Tactics represent the overarching strategy that threat actors use during different stages of a cyber attack. These methods guide how attackers gather intelligence, escalate privileges, move laterally through networks, and maintain long-term access. While advanced persistent threat, APT, groups often rely on consistent tactical patterns, they may also adjust their approach based on the environment or security measures in place. This adaptability can make detection and attribution more difficult. How tactics help in threat profiling. By analyzing tactics, cybersecurity teams can build a profile of potential adversaries, such as how they collect data, choose entry points, and sequence their moves. For example, some attackers rely exclusively on publicly available data. Others prefer social engineering tactics or leverage third-party connections to reach their target. Tactics can also involve varying levels of targeting. A single user may be approached individually, or multiple employees may be targeted in a coordinated manner. Understanding tactics, especially in the early stages of a breach, provides valuable insight into the attack path and helps build stronger preventive measures. Infrastructure and tools. Another way to assess attacker behavior is through the tools and infrastructure they use. Command and control, C2. Servers may be static or dynamic, centralized or distributed globally. Sophisticated actors may deploy custom malware, exploit zero-day vulnerabilities, or use advanced obfuscation methods. Less skilled attackers often depend on public exploits and open-source hacking tools. Recognizing these patterns supports early detection and defense. Techniques. The methods behind the attack. Techniques refer to the specific actions or tools used by adversaries during different phases of an attack. These include everything from the initial breach to data theft and post-exploitation activities. Early stage techniques. Reconnaissance. Tools and strategies to gather data, such as harvesting email addresses or mapping networks. Social engineering. Deceptive interactions, like phishing or vishing, to gain sensitive information. Mid-stage techniques. Once inside the network, threat actors may escalate privileges using exploits or misconfigurations, move laterally by exploiting weak points in network segmentation, use legitimate tools like PowerShell to avoid detection. Final stage techniques. Encrypting and exfiltrating sensitive data via encrypted channels, clearing system logs to hide their presence using steganography, rootkits, or fileless malware to cover their tracks. Analyzing techniques at each stage allows defenders to predict how a threat might unfold and deploy proper defenses accordingly. Procedures. The step-by-step playbook procedures are a detailed series of actions taken by attackers to carry out their tactics and techniques. The complexity of these steps often varies by the sophistication of the threat actor. For instance, a basic attacker may collect email addresses and send a generic phishing email. A more advanced actor might do extensive research, customize payloads, and fine-tune delivery to evade detection. Example of a detailed procedure. 1. Harvest publicly available data from social media. 2. Identify key personnel within an organization. 3. Launch a spear phishing campaign tailored to specific employees. 4. Deploy a payload that decrypts itself upon execution. 5. Establish persistence and communication with a C2 server. Evade monitoring tools and begin data exfiltration even if attackers try to conceal their tracks. Forensic analysis of these procedures, especially in later attack stages, can offer valuable insights. Why TTPs matter. Understanding tactics, techniques, and procedures gives cybersecurity teams a framework to detect threats earlier, attribute attacks to specific threat groups, develop proactive defenses, train security personnel to recognize patterns. By continuously monitoring and updating knowledge of attacker behavior, organizations can reduce risk and strengthen their cyber resilience. Understanding adversary behavioral patterns. Identifying adversary behaviors is essential for strengthening an organization's cyber defense. This process involves recognizing the common tactics and routines attackers follow to breach a network. By studying these behaviors, cybersecurity teams gain valuable insights into emerging threats and can enhance their defenses accordingly. Key behavioral indicators used for threat detection. Internal reconnaissance. Once an attacker gains a foothold inside a network, they begin scanning for additional systems, services, and vulnerabilities. This internal mapping may include identifying hosts, IP addresses, open ports, or running services, checking local user accounts and system configurations, executing PowerShell or batch commands to gather intelligence. How to detect it? Monitor unusual command execution, suspicious scripts, or unexpected use of network mapping tools. Abuse of PowerShell. PowerShell is often misused by adversaries to automate tasks like stealing sensitive data, installing malware, establishing persistent access detection. Tip: review PowerShell transcript logs, Windows event logs, or track strange user agent strings and IP addresses involved in command execution or file transfers. Hidden proxy activities. Some attackers register multiple domains pointing to the same compromised system. This tactic allows them to rotate between domains, making it harder for defenders to track them. Defense strategy: analyze DNS and domain reputation feeds to uncover unusual traffic patterns, unexpected downloads, and unauthorized communication attempts. Command line interface, CLI, abuse. Once inside, attackers often rely on the CLI to navigate file systems, create new user accounts, launch malware, connect to external servers. How to spot it? Check for abnormal process names, processes launched with random character strings, or logs showing downloads from suspicious sources. Altered HTTP user agents. Attackers may modify HTTP user agent fields to blend into legitimate traffic while maintaining communication with compromised systems. Prevention tip: inspect HTTP user agent strings for anomalies or inconsistencies that don't match known or approved applications. Command and control, C2 channels. Attackers use C2 servers to remotely control compromised systems. These encrypted channels help exfiltrate data, install further malware, or delete traces of the attack. Detection method: watch for unusual outbound traffic, communication on uncommon ports, or repeated connection attempts to unfamiliar IP addresses. DNS tunneling. DNS tunneling is a technique used to hide malicious traffic within normal DNS queries. Attackers may use this method to bypass firewall rules and communicate with external systems without detection. What to monitor? Look for high volumes of unusual DNS queries, long or encoded payloads, or DNS requests going to unknown domains. DNS tunneling. DNS tunneling is a technique used to hide malicious traffic within normal DNS queries. Attackers may use this method to bypass firewall rules and communicate with external systems without detection. What to monitor? Look for high volumes of unusual DNS queries, long or encoded payloads, or DNS requests going to unknown domains. Web shell usage. A web shell allows an attacker to execute commands on a web server remotely by embedding a malicious script into a website. Red flags. Unusual server activity, strange error logs, suspicious post requests, or encoded payloads in HTTP traffic. Data staging. Before exfiltrating or destroying data, attackers often collect and organize valuable information, including personal details of employees or customers. Intellectual property. Financial records. Network configurations detection technique. Use file integrity monitoring, examine event logs, and flag large data transfers, especially to unfamiliar destinations. Final note: by tracking and analyzing these behavioral cues, cybersecurity professionals can boost their detection and response strategies. Behavioral analytics is a crucial part of modern threat intelligence and helps in spotting threats early, before major damage occurs.